Sleeping with your mother, sleeping with your cousin, sleeping with a blood relative is considered an abomination. Within Igbo cosmological system, it is an abomination, and every single act of abomination needs to be cleansed through the ritual principles of Igbo. Whenever you commit an abomination, it's cleansed because we perceive it as this attitude, this action is against the principles of our jhana. And because it is against the principles of our jhana, it requires a ritualistic cleansing of Igbo. Now, if we look at this practice of inbreeding, we can ask the question, why did our ancestors, who never saw the adverse effect of this action, place a taboo on it? Because we are quite aware that there are some civilization, royal blood, or people that we are into this whole inbreeding of a thing because they want to keep the purity of their bloodline. And we could see how that messed up that entire family in their appearance and how they process information and all those things. But our ancestors did not really have any recorded place where they said this was because of this is why we did this. But they placed a taboo on incestuous relationships. But the only thing that I can say is that our ancestors were quite aware that having an intimate relationship with a blood relative can result to inbreeding, which would lead to the elimination of life itself. Every single Igbo custom tradition is targeted at being at the promotion of life. It is pro-life. This is why abortion also falls into this category of alo. And so homosexual relationship also falls into this category of alo because it is perceived that it is anti-life. And this is why when I tell people that human sacrifice is not an Igbo, is not part of the Igbo spiritual system, people think I'm mistaken. But when you now study Igbo cosmology, Igbo spirituality, Igbo culture, you will now see elements that promote life. And how can a people that every single culture, custom that they have is targeted at promoting life suddenly begins to now have actions or customs that are anti-life? So the existence of most of the abominations, the taboos that we have, it's because those actions are perceived to be anti-life, and having a carnal knowledge of your blood relative would result in the elimination of life itself. Now, what we can currently see from the information that we can currently see among some European families that practice inbreedings, we could see that some of them turned out to be monstrous. Their physical physique, some of them, you cannot necessarily categorize them as human beings again. You cannot. And some of them, they lack the way they process information. Their mental capacity is no longer optimal. Some of them, their brain cells are kind of reduced. They don't really, apprehend information that if without this inbreeding, they would have been able to, form as fully grown human beings. And biologically, we know that the father brings in 90% of the genetic makeup. The mother also brings in 50%. The father brings in 50. The mother also brings in 50. Both of them makes up the chromosomes, the genes that forms a full human being. And when there's an absence of any of the chromosomes, the child is more likely to come with a birth defect. So imagine when the mother is bringing an exact genetic match, the father is also bringing an exact genetic match. What are you now bringing together? So when two exact genetic genes match, it unfortunately, it just brings in, if there is any disease that is within the family, there could not be any recessive gene that is able to combat or fight it. So even without our ancestors being open or privileged to this information, they were able to place a taboo on inbreeding. This is why when people out there say that our ancestors were just existing without doing things or living like human beings, I begin to wonder, is it the same ancestors that I'm breeding today or another kind of ancestors? So within some European families, you can see that practice this inbreeding, because some of them turned out to be monstrous, some of them turned out to be cannibals, and therefore they had to place a taboo on such practice. Our ancestors placed a taboo on this practice, and we now even embedded it into our spiritual system, because once you embed something to the spiritual system, people tend to fear it. People tend to fear it. Now I can look at a lot of things that people say, oh, if you do this or if you do that, the next thing is your ancestors, you will suffer the consequences. Now because of the fear of these consequences, it makes sure that people did not engage in incestuous relationships. So you will see that by embedding it in a spiritual system, it acted as a form of social mechanism for control, because fear is a good tool for social control. Our ancestors placed it there, but then, to me, they saw something. They understood that inbreeding could basically lead to an extinction of life. So this is one of the reasons. Now, inbreeding was known to be dangerous. If our ancestors didn't have to go to school, study about biology or gene, but they knew somehow. This is why I tell people that the Igbo man has nature as his repository for information. The Igbo man uses nature, things he sees within nature, as repository for information. So we try to mimic nature, and everything about nature is targeted towards the promotion and the preservation of life. Now, ancestors were aware of this even before the establishment of secular laws that outrightly placed a ban on incestuous relationships. So secular laws are now saying, don't do this, they're going to give you so jail time. And our ancestors before, because these secular laws were formed based on the information that they were able to get, based on our understanding of biology, our understanding of how the human system forms and functions, just how the most secular laws were able to be enacted. They used claims and evidence and research and information to back it. Our ancestors, even without the absence of all those arsenals, they were able to understand that inbreeding and being in a incestuous relationship can lead to the elimination and the destruction of life itself. So they played the taboo of alo and alo. Now alo, when they're talking about alo and alo, when you now look at the processes and the protocols involved in the alo, it is going to the shame alone would make you not to engage in it. And when you now engage in it and decide to keep quiet, they will now also tell you that the Mother Earth is going to kill you. The Mother Earth is going to do one or two things to you, and this would immediately set you up and make you to act right and not engage in that religion. So that was a very wonderful and brilliant strategy that our ancestors actually used when it comes to this thing of inbreeding and our perception of incestuous relationships as alo within the Igbo cosmological system. So yeah guys, until next time, don't forget to follow me. Let's have more conversations on this. Yeah guys,